Good evening to all the participants. I am seeing that although not many people have joined, but still we should start on time, and people may that the GST refunds. Now, amendments in the Customs Act, we would not be discussed today. As many questions as possible. You can keep asking your questions on the chat box and we would be answering all of them. Regarding GST refunds, again, we would now GST refunds are procedural aspects are more or less clear. RFD3 or payment advice in RFD5, etc. Here in this webinar, I would only discuss the critical issues and which the industry has been facing, which we have solved for the industry and our clients and other taxpayers, and issues which are there in the courts and where favorable orders have come, where you would all maybe for your clients, or if you are in the industry for your company, you may be facing in GST refunds as on date. So the critical issues are the only thing which we would be discussing in GST refunds. And again, yeah, if you have certain technical issue or any issue for your clients or for your company, you can always write in your chat box or post the session half an hour. We will have a question answer session. You can park your questions till then, and even by unmuting post the webinar, you can always discuss and we would try to answer all of them. So friends, first the amendments in the Customs Act 1962 proposed White this budget 2021. Section 7B read with section 154C of the Customs Act 1962. Just like GST portal, Customs electronic portal, which would help the taxpayers in filing bill of entry, shipping bill, registration, even amendment of bill of entry and shipping bills, payment of duty, and other purposes. So as of now, the digital signing, etc., after the Turant scheme of customs, now this customs common portal would be there. As of now, in a particular port or airport, the bill of entry related to other ports or airports are not available or visible. In case even a customs officer, he has to access the bill of entry or shipping bill related to any other port, he has to go to the email and mail to those particular port or airport, and once the other officer receives the mail, he replies back. It is understood that this common customs electronic portal would facilitate the viewing and accessing of bill of entry, shipping bills of other ports and airports also sitting from one port. Well, along with this, there is an amendment in section 149. We would come to that, but just because it is linked to this, it is through an bill of entry or shipping bill that can be done through this common customs electronic portal. Now, this is a very, very important development, because as we all know, to get a bill of entry or shipping bills rectified, that is a Herculean task in customs. And if electronic portal can do the rectification online, then it would tremendously help. Another amendment is under section 5 subsection 3 read with section 110 1 capital D. Well, that is regarding pre-trial disposal of gold. So the powers of the commissioner appeal that has been enhanced, and the commissioner appeals has been authorized to issue orders, right? Orders for the pre-trial disposal of gold, which is imported and where there is a well doubt of contravention, etc. So the commissioner appeals has the power to document the inventory, etc. And that document for the purpose of evidence, that would be presumed to be a valid document for the purpose of pre-trial disposal of gold, right? Section 25(4)(a) has been amended. Now this is a big change, okay, and it would impact all trade and industry. Whatever company you are in or whatever clients you have, what I see, this is a big change. Section 28(b). Well, section 28 is just like if you have read service tax, section 73, 74 for the recovery, demands and recovery. Same way GST section 73, 74 is for demands and recovery, and the time barring period for issuing of show cause notices. Same way section 28 under the Customs Act 1962 is for time barring period in case of customs for issuing of show cause notices under customs. Friends, section 28(b) has been inserted, which provides that the show cause notices can be issued within 2 years from the date of initiation of audit, search, seizure or summons. So in hindsight, this section 28(b), it gives the power to the customs authority to issue show cause notices till time's eternity, almost. If the audit is initiated after 4 years or 5 years, then from the date of initiation of the audit, or if a summon is initiated after 5 years, then from the date of initiation of the summon, the department would have 2 more years to issue show cause notices. So if the time barring period, you see, for the demands and recovery, if they see that that has expired, they will go through the audit route and they will buy more of 2 years to initiate any show cause notice under 28(b). So if 28(b) is in addition to 28, and it gives the powers to the department to initiate show cause notice till almost time's eternity, right? So do not feel that once the goods are imported for 5 years, you have not received a show cause notice, then everything is hunky dory. You can still get they can take a audit or even a summon route, and they can buy 2 years of time from the date of the summon. And well, after that, one can go ahead and litigate in High Court if one feels like, whether there is sufficiency of reason, etc. But once at least the department can give a show cause notice, within 2 years from the date of initiation of the audit, search, seizure, etc. Plus 1 year additional time, which can be extended by the commissioner through an order. So 2 plus 1, 3 years the department can buy. Section 46, again, it is a big change under Customs Act 1962. Well, we all know for filing the bill of entry, one part is to file a prior bill of entry, right? Where they file the bill of entry, and after the goods are arrive at the port or the airport, thereafter the final bill of entry is made. The time limit for filing this bill of entry was 1 day after the goods reach the port or airport. Now that has been shifted 1 day back. That is, before the day on which the goods actually reach the port or airport, the prior bill of entry has to be filed, and all bill of entries have to be prior bill of entries, right? Before the goods reaches the port or airport, the bill of entry should have been filed. And I think once the bill of entry, the goods enter the port, then the customs duty can be assessed. Well, this possibly is to decrease the dwell time. Now, what is dwell time under customs? Internationally, it is measured by the time which is taken after the goods arrive at the port and till the time they are cleared for home consumption. So the customs authority wants all the importers to file the bill of entry even before the goods reach the port or airport, and thereafter they keep everything ready, and the duty, once the goods arrive, then the estimate of the duty is made and the goods are cleared for home consumption, so that is dwell time. This is minimized, and possibly due to this, the ease of business ranking of the country also goes up. While certain provisions related to refund or remission, section 113 and 114 AC of the Customs Act 1962, that has been amended. Now, friends, for any fraud or misstatement or suppression or collusion in case of GST refunds of input tax credit, till now we know there are penal provisions under GST Act, whereby the refund amount has to be reimbursed to the government along with 100% penalty plus interest. In income tax, as we know, in the Finance Bill 2020 and Finance Act 2019, in fact, Finance Bill 2019, Wide Finance Act, it was notified, Wide Finance Act 2019, that under section 271AA(d) of the Income Tax Act, on the one hand, in GST for fraudulent refunds, one is penalized with the GST amount and the penalty and interest, and under income tax, it is 200% of the value of the goods, not the GST amount, mind that. Now, a similar penalty comes under section 114 AC and 113 of the Customs Act. So, for fraudulent or refund by willful misstatement or collusion, now there would be a three-way penalty, one under GST, one under income tax, and now under Customs Act also. So the government, as far as GST is concerned, is really tightening the noose. However, friends, well, in many cases, I would say these refund penal provisions are not used on only malafide assessees. Many a times the bona fide assessees also have to go through a lot of hardship. Well, you would all have faced in some form of the other, or in some client who is doing refunds, or in your company, you could have faced this tagging under risky exporters. If you have not, I'll tell you what is tagging under risky exporters. Now, there is a department in Delhi, Connaught Place, in the building where GST Council is there, in the LIC building. There is a department called DGARM, Director General of Analytics and Risk Management. As we all know, the government has spent more than 1,000 crore of rupees on software and on infrastructure, whereby the government can do big data analytics, and through artificial intelligence, they find out what are the issues under GST, especially related to input tax credit. Now, this DGARM, through certain data analytics and artificial intelligence tools, they identify certain exporters as risky exporters and tag them as risky exporters under customs and under GST. Right? Now, what happens? After tagging them, there was a circular in January 2019 under customs, whereby these exporters who are tagged as risky exporters, within 21 days, they should be preliminary assessed, and in case there is any issue, then the tagging continues, or the tagging could have been released. However, this is not the practical scenario. The practical scenario in many of our clients' case is that this risky exporters tag is very difficult to get untagged. Now, what happens is, the moment this risky exporters is tagged, and if you are in any charge, state charge or central range is your jurisdictional office, they would not do the scrutiny. The scrutiny would be initiated by anti-evasion department in your commissionerate, right? Now, it is said that it would be a preliminary scrutiny of ITC, but by and large, the entire scrutiny of ITC is done, and entire assessment is done over a period ranging from 3 to 5 months. If you go through this scrutiny and you get this closed, then your commissioner, he sends the file to the chief commissioner. Now the chief commissioner, he sends the file to DGARM, giving the NOC from the commissionerate that, okay, this exporter is good to be untagged. Now in DGARM, again, there is an analysis of supply chain, right? That is, they do an analysis on whether your suppliers are tagged as risky suppliers or not. In case any of your suppliers are tagged as risky suppliers, then they get back and they start doing a scrutiny of these suppliers. And mind that there is a provision for doing scrutiny of L2 suppliers. What is L2 suppliers? It is a supplier, right? So if you are, say, if you are, say, exporting, say, solar panels, right? And you have purchased these solar panels from a supplier, say L1, and your supplier has purchased these solar panels from another supplier, L2. And if this L2 supplier has not filed his GSTR 3B returns, then until he pays the tax to the government, you will not be untagged as risky exporters. And after tagging as risky exporters, 100% of the verification is done on ports for your shipping bills and shipments. All your GST refunds and duty drawbacks are stored. So, friends, now this is the way data analytics and artificial intelligence under GST is working, right? Therefore, now to get this risky exporters untagged, well, you have to follow the department supply chain. You have to go to your anti-evasion first, get your file cleared, then go to the commissioner and get your file cleared. Then you have to go to the chief commissioner and get your file cleared. Send it to the DGARM. Sometimes go to the DGARM in Delhi, and from there try to get an NOC. Well, there is another portal called DDM portal. There are email IDs to which you can write, right? And the respective commissioner you can speak to. But it has become now this data analytics and input tax credit or refunds. Well, this is the situation, and we have to be very, very careful while doing the input tax credit scrutiny. More so, we have to be very careful on which suppliers we are dealing with. In one such case, you see, where the DGRM found certain issues with one of our supplier, we actually undertook to get the supplier to pay the respective tax so that we are untagged as risky exporters. So now with this 114 AC under Customs Act, you are penalized through Customs Act also in case there is an issue in the refunds. Well, this 139 is presumption as to documents. It is corollary to 154C. 149, we have already discussed through this common customs electronic portal. Once it is notified and it sees light of day, then you may be able to do, based on your risk analysis, certain amendments in shipping bills and bill of entries online through this portal. Section 153 is again another very welcome move. The moment this customs common electronic portal is notified and sees light of day, it is in process, then the show cause notices or orders would also be available online, right? So now there are various ways to issue show cause notices or orders. One can be through hard copy, one can be through email to the registered ID of the taxpayer or the importer exporter, and now it can be uploaded on the common portal. Possibly each tax importer or exporter would be getting a user ID and password also of this common portal. Well, there is one major change in the Customs Tariff Act relating to anti-dumping duty and countervailing duty. Is that the anti-dumping duty and countervailing duty, it would be a continuous process to check by the Customs Department in case there is any anti-circumvention or anti-absorption. What is anti-circumvention or what is circumvention or anti-absorption? It is that in case the anti-dumping or CVD that is circumvented through routing the goods to other countries or by changing the composition of the nature of the goods, etc. Then through an order, the department can do an inquiry, and through an order, the department can invoke this anti-dumping duty or countervailing duty on those goods on which it is considered to be circumvented. Countervailing duty and anti-dumping duty, we all know, is for a period of 5 years. Now, via an amendment in section 9 and 9A, it can be extended for further period of 5 years, and after that again for a further period of 5 years. So ADD and CVD can be extended till time's eternity, but 5 years at a time. In case it is seek to be extended, then it has to be extended 3 months before the last day on which it is in vogue. Import at concessional rate of duty rules 2017 have been amended to allow job work of materials to also be imported at concessional rate of duty. And even after you import it for job work, then it is not that you have to keep it with a job worker. The job work exercise can be outsourced. So any goods which you would otherwise import at concessional rate of duty, if you are under this IGCR 2007 rules, read with notification 50 2017 and other notifications, you can import the same goods for job work also, and you can outsource the material which you have imported for job work at concessional rate of duty. In case of capital goods, if you use it, then you can pay on the depreciated value, you can pay the interest and the duty, right? Agriculture Infrastructure and Development Cess, AIDC. Now, this is in addition to social welfare surcharge, right? So first, basic customs duty, add social welfare surcharge. On basic customs duty, add AIDC on basic and SWS, right? It is applicable on all imported goods, right? I'm using the word all imported goods. However, as of now, the specified goods on which it has been levied have been detailed and notified. AIDC would be levied from 2nd of February 2021 itself at the midnight. So basic plus social welfare surcharge plus AIDC. As of now, wherever AIDC has been levied, right, the basic customs duty has been proportionately reduced. It is the intention of the government as to not further burden the importers, but to transfer some money to for agriculture infrastructure development. So friends, these are the major amendments in the Customs Act 1962 and Customs Tariff Act 1975 and the customs rules. Well, we would now discuss on the GST refunds, and we all know that there have been major changes under GST refunds and in this budget. We would discuss a little on those and very critical issues on GST refunds, right, which across the country trade and industry is facing. So first, in this budget, I'll come to the budget first, then we would discuss on the other important amendments and the issues. First, in this budget, as we discussed in the last webinar, that Section 16 of the IGST Act is proposed to be amended, right? By which import the refunds on payment of duty would cease to exist now. So no more refund on payment of duty. All refunds would have to compulsorily be done through without payment of duty route. That is, export has to be compulsorily done without payment of duty through LUT now, and refund have to be applied for, and the refunds have to be taken after complete scrutiny of the invoices, etc. Well, in addition to this, there was already Rule 96 capital B was notified, I think, on 31st March 2020. Now wide amendment through Section 16 of the IGST Act. This Rule 96B has been provided with further teeth. What is this amendment? Now we all know that for export of services, right, the refund would be eligible only after which the amount under in foreign currency was received, right? Because until the amount in foreign currency or as allowed by the RBI was received, the export of services would not be considered to be a valid export of services under Section 2, subsection 6 of the IGST Act. Okay. Same or similar provisions has been incorporated for goods also under section 16 of the IGST Act 2017. Now, what is this amendment? For the purpose of export of goods also, you have to do it only through LUT route now without payment of duty. So that is understood. However, you can take the refunds immediately after exports. What is export for the purpose of GST and customs? Moving the goods from India out of India. That is exports. Very simple. So exports you can do, and the moment you have an EGM, Export General Manifest, you can go for, you see, filing of refunds under GST, and you can get the refund also. However, if within 9 months or further extended period allowed by the RBI under FEMA Act, you as an exporter do not get the remission under foreign exchange or INR under Nostro Vostro scheme as allowed by the RBI, then you have to return this amount to the government with interest, right? So you can get the government is saying for the purpose of GST, you can get the refund, no problem. We will give you the refund for the purpose of export of goods. However, if you do not get the money in foreign exchange within 9 months or 12 months or as extended period by the RBI, then you have to return the money to the government with interest. Now the question is, what if I get the remission post this period allowed by the RBI? So say 9 months is the period allowed by the RBI under FEMA to get the remission under foreign exchange. The question now is that if the exporter gets the money in 10 months, what does he do? Can he claim back this refund? Or what is the process? The process would be, you go to the RBI again, get a relaxation or extension in the period for remission. If you get the period for remission extended by the RBI under the FEMA Act, then within 30 days of such extended period, you have to reapply for refund, which has been returned by you to the government, to the GST authorities, and you would be paid back the refund which you have returned to the government along with the interest which you have returned also to the GST department, right? So this is the major change as far as refunds or exports under GST is concerned. Another important change as far as SEZ supply is concerned is that supply to SEZ of only those material which are authorized to the SEZ, only that would be zero rated. Other supplies would not be zero rated, right? So this is the amendment in section 16 of the IGST Act. Now friends, another important development as far as refunds under GST is concerned is Wide Circular 4 and Circular 5 issued in February 2021. Okay. Circular 4 and Circular 5. Now, the government has done a balancing act, I would say. What balancing act? Circular 4 and Circular 5 has been issued by the government, right? Just a moment. So now White Circular 4 and Circular 5 under customs, any issue you have till 31st March 2021 in case of on payment of duty refund. Now, two major issues for on payment of duty refund were as follows. First issue was this SB 005 error, right? Whereby your invoice number as per GST portal and invoice number as per the refund claim for the IceGate portal, they were not matching. Then there was an error which was thrown SB 005, and till 31st of December 2019 there was this circular that till just a moment. Yeah. So in case of this SB 005 error, there was a solution that you can file a concatenate table matching both the invoice numbers to the jurisdiction office in customs, and you can get it resolved. But that facility was available till 31st of December 2019. Now that has been extended till 31st of March 2021. So till 31st of March 2021, in case you have any SB 005 error, please go ahead and get it resolved. Right? There would be specific, you see, benches in the or specific officers in the customs department who would be there to resolve SB 005 errors. Another issue for on payment of duty refund was in case the 3B amount of exports was less than the GSTR 1 amount, right? At that time there was an error, and you would have to submit the CA certificate stating the reconciliation was okay. Now that period has been extended again. Now if you have such an error with the mismatch of GSTR 1 and 3B, you can again go to the customs department and you can get it resolved till date. So the department has done a balancing act whereby on the one hand it has discontinued on payment of duty refund, right? On the other hand, what the department has done is that all the pending issues in on payment of duty refund, that has been taken care of, right? Well, the amendment under section 60 also provides that in case the government is merciful going forward, then for certain category of exporters or exporters with certain category of goods or services, for them the on payment of duty refunds would be eligible, right? But that notification for the category of exporters or goods or services, that goods has to be awaited, right? Till that is not notified, till that time all exporters have to file refunds or export goods without payment of duty and file for LUT refunds. Friends, another issue under customs is that right now I would discuss 5 or 6 various critical issues which maybe you would have also faced in your companies, or as a consultant or as a GST practicing CA or CMA, you would have faced for your clients. Now, for the purpose of inverted duty structure, right, there are two issues, and I am discussing a very critical issue where that is litigative, but I am sure that you see, in case you have such a problem, that you can take shelter under this. Now, as of now, what is the time barring period under GST refund for inverted duty structure refunds? It is within 2 years from the date of filing of return for the period for which you are claiming inverted duty refunds, right? So for example, for April 2019, the refund for, sorry, April 2018, the time barring period for claiming refund under inverted duty structure has expired in April 2020. So if you have forgotten to file inverted duty refunds for the month of April 2018, that is now time barred, and the period is closed. Friends, I would draw your attention in this regard to an amendment made in explanation 2 small e to the section 54, whereby previously, before the amendment in 2019, the time barring period for inverted duty refund was 2 years from the end of the relevant financial year. So, if for April 2018, the end of the financial year is March 2019, right? Now, if you see, draw that, then March 21 is the time barring period for, or April 21 is the time barring period for refunds under inverted duty structure for the period April 2018, right? Now, the question is, would that law be applicable? Well, you might note, if you have such a case, in the case of Vatika Township, the Supreme Court has invoked Article 20, Sub-Article 2 of the Constitution of India, which talks about post facto law, right? Now, what is post facto law? The law as on date of the crime that would be applicable. So while Vatika Township case, the Supreme Court has held that for any benefits also law as on date would prevail. So as on April 2018, the time barring period was March 2021, and by invoking Vatika Township, still you can file inverted duty refunds claim for the period April 2018. The department might litigate it, but it is better than to litigate rather than to lose on the refund money under GST, right? So this is a very, very important, well, this is not written in the books anywhere, but I always say, when you are reading any tax law, it can be income tax, it can be customs, it can be, you see, GST, you must also be aware of other acts, specifically the Constitution of India. And one case law in one act can help other. And mind that this Vatika Township was a judgment of the Supreme Court in income tax case, right? Now, friend, another issue is in case of inverted duty structure is that you are not getting the refunds for input services which has been used under inverted duty structure supply of goods. Well, if such a case is there with your client or with your company, then you can take shelter under the judgment of the Gujarat High Court in the case of VKC Footsteps, right? In fact, you see, we had called a officer in CII, a revenue officer, around 1 year back, and she was very categorical that the department is going to issue a circular allowing the refund in case of input services, also in case of inverted duty structure refunds, apropos the judgment in VKC Footsteps. However, we saw a U-turn by the department, and they actually went in for a SLP in the Supreme Court. So yes, till the time the Supreme Courts decide on this issue, till that time the issue is still open. But in case you have such a claim, it is better to file the claim and go for an appeal, so that in case the Supreme Court comes out with a decision in the favor of the appellants, then at least you can take shelter and you would get the benefit of that judgment also. Another issue which we are contending is that it is the department's contention by invoking second proviso to section 54 subsection 3. At least I can say in West Bengal, the department is taking a view that due to the existence of the second proviso to section 54 subsection 2, in case you are taking on payment of duty refunds, you would not be eligible to take inverted duty refunds or claim inverted duty refunds. So if you have applied online for on payment of duty refunds, then even though you fall under inverted duty structure, you would not be eligible for inverted duty claim, because second proviso to those exporters who are exporting without payment of duty and to those exporters who are exporting with payment of duty, to them inverted duty structure refund would not be allowed. Friends, another critical, a general issue which we all as professionals face in case of refunds is what is this unjust enrichment, right? Now we all feel that GST refund is available only for inverted duty or on payment of duty or exports, right? However, there are almost 15 categories of GST refunds which you can take. Like if you pay excess in cash ledger, you can take a refund. TDS, TCS, GST refunds you can claim, etc. Now I would discuss a very recent case which was handled. Now the Instant Company was a company whose output products were not liable to GST. So they were doing non-GST supply, say petrol pumps. So this company, or say alcohol companies, right? So now where your product output tax liability is zero, your product is not under GST or it is exempt, then all the GST charged by the vendors go into your cost. And therefore you start seeing where you can ask your vendors not to charge GST, right? Or charge reduced rate of GST within the four corners of the wall. So in one such case, one vendor was charging 18% GST on a particular product which it was supplying to my client. My client was supplying non-GST goods. So for it, that client, it was getting into its cost. So then they did certain analysis and we went to the vendor and we say, gentlemen, your product should not be 18%, it should be 12%. The vendor said, gentlemen, I agree with you, but I need assurance, because tomorrow this balance 6%, I don't want to get into a mess with the GST department. So we said, fine, take an advance ruling. Generally, advance rulings are against the taxpayers, most of the advance rulings. But we were lucky, we got a favorable order, right? So now the question is the 6% refunds, the 6% payments, which the vendor had taken and which we had done under protest. Would that 6% be available as a refund to the vendor and then to us? Well, friends, there is a section 54 subsection 8 clause E, 54(8)(e), read with section 8, read with rule 89 clause K, whereby any excess tax which you have paid to the government, that can be claimed as a refund to you. But section 54(4) comes in the way. What does 64(4) says? Read with again rule 89 M and N. It says that you have to prove unjust enrichment. We have all heard this phrase unjust enrichment in case of indirect taxes. So you have to prove that the cost of this GST has not been passed on to the consumer. So we said, fine, gentlemen, we have already made a provision in the balance sheet. So first understanding is, in such a case, you have to make a receivable in the balance sheet, so that you can show clearly that you have not passed on the incidence of the tax to the consumer. However, second explanation to section 89(2) comes in the way. It says that in case a particular vendor has charged on his invoice such tax to the recipient, it would be deemed that the incidence of tax has been passed on to the consumer. Friends, if such be the case, then the refund would not be eligible. So, unjust enrichment in this case, now we have to go to the department and we have to, you see, if the vendor and the recipient both go to the department with their submissions to prove unjust enrichment, that actually the recipient has not passed on the incidence of tax to the ultimate consumer. We still are in the initial stages of this case, and going forward, which will let you know. However, the understanding in this is that you must always guard against unjust enrichment provisions in this case. So it is always better, if such be the case, you ask your vendor not to charge 18% on your invoice. You, if it has a cash flow problem, you pay this, say, balance 6% to the vendor, right? Separately, and ask him to keep it as a deposit, or he can pay the tax also to the department under protest, so that you are saved of interest also, and this unjust enrichment does not come in the way. We feel that in this case that we would not get the adequate relief from the department, because you see, they would go as per the strict provision of the statute. So they would go as per strict provisions of Rule 89 sub Rule 2 clause 2, the second explanation. They will say that, gentlemen, your vendor has billed you, it is deemed that you have passed on the incidence to the customer. Whereas in my case, I cannot, I already have a provision or is receivable in the balance sheet from the vendor, and I can prove from my costing that the incidence of tax has not passed to the vendor. So this is a very, very important case which is happening. Another very practical issue under GST is in case of land customs for export to Nepal, Bhutan, etc. Now, what happens in land customs? You see, as we have discussed, what is the proof of export, final proof of export? It is not the shipping bill, it is the Export General Manifest, EGM, right? So in case of land customs, the ports are non-EDI ports. You do not get the EGM on the ICE gate. So what does the customs officer do, who is, or the GST officer who is sanctioning your refund? He does not allow your refund for those land customs refund in case of ports like Nepalganj, Sahibganj, Sanauli, etc. Right? So in this case, again, it is not written in the book anywhere, mind that, right? It is something which we have handled because refund was very, very important and we had to find a in-between solution. So what we did in these cases, what you should do, it is a very practical solution which I am telling to you. Nowhere you will find it in the book, nowhere you will find it in the department procedures. We requested the GST officer who was sanctioning the refund that, madam, you please write to this customs authorities in the respective port, whether to give you the EGM or to confirm to you that the export has been done. So madam wrote to the customs authority in Sanauli and Nepalganj, and we got hold of the corresponding customs authority in these ports, and we requested him in the port to check and to revert to this mail. So the moment they reverted to this mail, the refund was sanctioned even though the EGM was not available online. So important in these cases where there are non-EDI ports, you should do either of the two. Either, in fact, I would suggest always, in addition to shipping bill, you must always keep the export general manifest. That is one. The other is that in case EGM is not there, then you can follow this route. You can ask the customs authorities to kind of reply to the mail of the officer sanctioning the refunds, so that the refunds are sanctioned and there is no problem, right? Well, another very, you see, I would say it is a bad drafting by the GST authorities. Under Rule 89, Sub-Rule 4, Clause capital C. Well, this was inserted in March 2020, just after the lockdown. I don't know what was the reason of inserting this Rule 89, 4, Clause C. The clause says that in case your value of export, the word used is value of exported goods, is more than 1.5 times the value of supply in the domestic market of your goods, or like goods supplied in the domestic market by like suppliers, then the refund would be sanctioned only to the extent of 1.5 times the value of the domestic goods. Well, by this, it seems, by this kind of drafting, it seems that if you have supplied 100 rupees in the domestic market, then you cannot do an export of more than 150 rupees. Well, that is not the intention of the law. Okay, even in your case, you know what is the value of your domestic supply. But how do you know like suppliers? How do you know whether the like supplier or your competitor has not done more than 100 rupees? So it is actually a practically, you see, impossible to perform kind of a rule. The intent of the law is to see that the rate of your exported goods is not more than 1.5 times the rate which you charge for the same goods or like suppliers charge for like goods in the domestic market, so that you do not take more GST refunds or drawbacks and export benefits than which is available to you. However, it has been so drafted that it seems otherwise, and all the officers are asking for a declaration. Again, the practical solution is you give this declaration, right? Although I would say it would be a misdeclaration. However, to get the refunds, you have to declare, and so it is better to give the declaration and then write to the CBIC. Through Chambers of Commerce, we have already represented before the CBIC on this topic. Possibly we could see an amendment going forward. Well, can merchant exporters claim the refund of this 0.1% charge?
Vivek, Samir.
Yeah, hi Samir.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Coincidentally, the point that you raised about Rule 89.4 and calculation of that refund, incidentally, CBIC had just just now clarified that point by a circular
147.
147. It actually clarify that point, and it is just a coincidence that that issue seems to be. You need to just relook into the issue and explain that circular if you have got a copy of it, because we have just sent it, so you might have received it.
Okay, in fact, I have just received your WhatsApp
WhatsApp and mail also. You might have
mail
received.
also.
Yeah. So it has
Just
given no, with illustration they have clarified this point. So I'm not gone into detail with, but if you could just have a look at it and just explain that point once again, that will be immediately clarify if there is any doubt.
okay. So actually, we had taken it up with the in the grievance redressal committee under GST. So maybe from there they have taken this representation. I'm just opening this circular. Okay, clarification on refund related issues under GST. Clarification on refund claim by deemed export. 89(1) clarification. Then,
There are 3 points they have covered:
yeah, I'm just
in
coming to this.
export, and then zero rated supply, the wrong declaration in form.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
there is a relaxation, they have extended the relaxation. And then the point related with calculation of adjusted total
yeah,
turnover.
yeah, yeah. This point 4. Okay.
Yes,
Great. So it's such a coincidence. Okay, what
yes.
it says this para 4.1. Doubts have been raised as to whether the restrictions on turnover of zero rated supply of goods to 1.5 times the value of like goods domestically supplied by the same or similarly placed suppliers as declared by the supplier imposed by the amendment in the definition of turnover under 89(4)(c). Subrule 89(4) gives this formula. Turnover in a state says this. From the examination of the above, it is noticed that adjusted total turnover includes this under 112. The definition of turnover and accordingly adjusted turnover for the purpose. Thus, restrictions of 150% of the value of like goods domestically supplied as applied in turnover would also apply to the value of the adjusted total turnover. Accordingly, it is clarified that for the purpose of 89(4), the value of export or zero rated supply of goods to be included while calculating will be the same as determined as per amended definition. The same can be 1.5 times the value of similar goods. Suppose supplier is manufacturing only and it is supplying the same goods in both domestic and overseas market. Okay. Here they are. Right. So yeah, actually they have tried to clarify their position. Okay, so they are relating it to adjusted turnover and they have tried to confuse initially to kind of, it seems to safeguard what they have drafted. But what I have said as of now, they have clarified the same thing, gentlemen and ladies, and it actually talks about the rate, right? They have talked about the rate here. In local supply, if the rate is 200 and in export quantity it is 350, then they have multiplied it by the amount also, about the quantity also. But they have changed the turnover also. Number of units they have kept the same. So yeah, I feel that they have clarified the same thing in a different way. They have kept the units the same. The supply units, if you go to this circular, they have kept the units the same, and that is why they have, the way they have kind of explained this, it seems that they have kept on to the definition But the crux of the matter remains that it will go as the rate only. Okay, and by end of the day, we would come out and we would supply Samir with clarification further on this regard, on this entire circular, and our clarification would reach all the participants. And Samir, I would request you to all your members also, if you can send the clarification regarding this circular, which we would send through a write-up.
Yeah, sure, definitely.
Okay, so last few points on the matter of refund is, the last point is section 97A, sorry, rule 97A. This rule 97A, actually it has come after the decision of various high courts and the Supreme Court in the case of this medical care, right? Whereby it is held that for a glitch in the portal or for any procedural issues, a substantive claim cannot be denied. So rule 97A, it has been notified, whereby it is said that in case of any refund related issues, a reference to an online application or an online claim would also refer to the same claim which is made offline. So in case you face any technical glitch and all the assessees and taxpayers were running to the high courts, so because due to technical glitch they were not getting the refunds, now I feel that at the commissionerate level, through this rule 97A, you can approach the commissioner and you can try to get the refunds through an online application also, in case there is a technical glitch. So friends, thank you very much for joining. This is all from my side. And there are a few questions in the chat box, which I would reply to. Okay, Mr. Padi, my good friend, he has thanked for the PPT and efforts. Thank you very much, Mr. Padi. As always, you are a great motivator to all of us with your words. Okay, another participant, he says, while filing deemed export refund, we have received the refund. Then we came to know that we have missed out few invoices to add in the refund. We have claimed the refund of deemed export category in any other tab on GST portal, but the officer has rejected the claim of refund. Is there any way out to get the refund? Well, this rule 97A, this you can invoke, right? And you can file a rectification if the officer does not allow the refund still. In both the cases, I would say that, you through, because of this rule 97A, you can invoke this and maybe approach the jurisdictional high court, because this is just a procedural lapse and it cannot be denied. Your substantive claim cannot be denied for the procedural lapse. And rule 97A, it is squarely covered under this. Miss Usha says, can export be done without LUT on payment of tax? Miss Usha, as of now, yes, it can be done till the Finance Bill 2021 is notified into Finance Act, and then it is notified in the GST also after 50% of the state legislatures notify this or approve this Finance Bill and Finance Act. Okay, Ms. Shweta Agarwal, she says, we are filing IGST refund post payment of IGST through filing IGSTR1. As per GSTR1 for May 18, we declared less as compared to the shipping bill declared. IGST amount say 100, while filing GSTR3B paid GST amount aligned with the shipping bill amount 110. Subsequently, we received the IGST refund of 100. Still, there are pending refund of 10. Let us know what should be the way forward. So this circular 4 and circular 5 under customs, that would come to your rescue, and you can go to the customs department and you can try to get this refund out of rupees 10. However, I feel that this case is the reverse. Your 3B payment is more than the GSTR1. Yeah, but it is restricted you to the GSTR1 amount. So yeah, you can go and invoke this circular 4 and 5 and try to get this refund of rupees 10. Mr. Daksesh says, what would be the limitation period for filing GST refund for supply of goods to SEZ on payment of GST? Is it possible to claim for March 2018 period now? Mr. Daksesh, no, for only inverted duty refund, the time barring period can be contested through this Article 20, Sub-Article 2 and Vatika Township case. But for SEZ or export refunds, there is no such provision. For March 2018, the time barring period has already expired. May 2018 also, Mr. Daksesh, it has expired. It was May 2020 or June 2020. So thank you, everybody. And in case you have any other question, you can unmute yourself and ask. Any other question? Anybody can just unmute yourself and please ask. We would reply. And in the next session on 26th of March, we would have a very, very interesting session on how to handle GST litigation pan-India. You see, last 1 week I was in Delhi, and there are various search, seizures, summons, and invasive procedures, I would say, in addition to GST audits and assessments and notices which are carried on. It is very important that we are, as an industry and as consultants, we keep our clients and our companies ready for such invasive and other procedures of the department. We would discuss threadbare on how to handle these kind of procedures, invasive procedures by the departments, and across the country, if you are a multi-state registered company, how to handle it.
Hello.
Yeah, Mr. Praveen.
Yeah, hi, Mr. Vivek. I'm having a short question for you. Actually, for the financial year 17-18, let's say we have been declared an outward liability of RCM 1,000 rupees, and we have been paid the equivalent amount also. But last month itself, I came to know that it was paid excess and declared excess amount. So we have filed a refund application under others tab instead of excess payment because it is not appearing over the cash portal. But department has rejected that refund, saying that the time period has been expired. So is it right way of rejection, or should it be claimed under at the time of assessment when it will be done?
Well, here, yeah, because the time it is stuck by the time barred period. No, it is 2017-18, so it is already 2 years have expired, and it is time barred already. Only in case of this inverted duty, this you see 54 rule 89 2 explanation 2 can be taken shelter of.
But this excess payment is not appearing into the cash register. So can we take the plea that this was against the wrong valuation or something went wrong? That's what excess amount was paid. So whenever assessment will be there, so it would be granted us.
Yes, during assessment, they can grant the refund. No, after the assessment, if there is an excess payment. However, now while filing the refund, the time barring period would be taken from the date of the payment, right? So they would not grant the refund, but during assessment, yes, they can grant you this excess.
But just one more again, would it be called under excess payment of tax because it's not appearing on the ECL?
Why? You have paid and you have claimed the credit, no?
No, I have not claimed the credit because my commodity was exempt.
Okay, so you have just paid it and you have let it be.
Yeah.
Yeah, even then, on payment of duty, you have made the payment, so that challan date and the challan itself is a valid document which can be used for this excess paid amount, but you have to prove unjust enrichment. So I would suggest, with your statutory auditor's permission, you must create a claim, or at least you must keep a note of this somewhere.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other question?
Yes,
There is
please.
one question I have in the chat box. Is a company received order for the export of existing plant?
Okay, Mr. Jain, just hold on. Okay, so a company received order for export of existing plant and machinery. Total period of 1.5 to 2 years to dismantle and export of machinery. Company eligible to claim ITC on input and input services utilized in dismantled and export. Can ITC accumulate for 2 years, carried forward till export, and claim refund under export on basis of shipping bill. So is this a service or a goods export?
Basically, this is a good export. They have a plant which has to be export after dismantle. So there is a include the services as well. They have to dismantle and then export it.
100% you can claim, you can accumulate the ITC and claim a refund, no problem.
Okay, so we can accumulate for the 2 or 3 years till the date of export.
You can accumulate till 20 years, sir, no problem.
Okay.
The date of export the relevant date would start, that 2 years would start from the date of export.
Okay, sir, fine.
If the period export, so if period to export exceed 2 years, is there any no problem? Question 3, ITC on some other common expenses, legal expenses not related to eligible to export, no problem, 100% eligible for refund.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so thank you everybody, and we meet again on 26th of March, Friday.
Sir, one more question, sir.
One more question. Yes, please. Hello. You see, there is no voice.
Yes, Mr.
Kindly unmute yourself and ask. Okay, on the chat box. Chat box, we are claiming export. Can I ask something on the timing of e-invoice for export transaction?
So Praveen Kumar, please
Yeah.
unmute yourself.
Yeah. Hi, Mr. Vivek. Again, see, my question is related to the timing for the export raising of e-invoice for export transaction. See, let's say 1st January, we are raising the tax invoice, and with that only we are raising the e-invoice also. So while raising the tax invoice, we are filling it up USD $10,000 and generating the shipping bill. With this shipping bill, custom department is allowing us for the further verification and doing the necessary action for Leo. So in the from 1st January to 5th January, let's say there is a accumulation of entire my goods in the customs area and for the purpose of verification. So in the night around 11 o'clock, my everything stuffing and everything is done. and let's say during that day only custom exchange rates got changed, and let's say that 65 USD dollar rate converted to 70. So before Leo order was passed with the rate of 70. Even I have created the, I have filled my USD dollar is 10,000. So original shipping bill was filed with the rate of 65, but when Leo was issued, the rate exchanged to 70. Now the situation emerges before me. What should I do? Because my e-invoice was generated with a rate of 65, but shipping bill is showing the rate, final shipping bill is showing the rate of 70. So in that case, there is a disconnect with the tax amount. So would it be okay for us to issue the e-invoice post Leo? Because if I am not wrong, we should raise the e-invoice on or before movement of the goods, and Leo date is the right date to decide this factor. Thanks.
Yeah, so well, this is a very specific scenario, and so in this case, you see, this is one-off case, or this happens regularly?
As and when there is a change in the exchange rate, it's happened on that one. So you can understand that around we are having lots of exports, around 10 to 15 transaction in a month took place, because there is a twice occurrence of such event, or every 14th day, every 14th day.
So what is this Leo? What you are saying?
Leo is let export order from the date refund timing is start.
Let export order. Yeah. See, actually, let export order is not the date for the invoice. What my opinion is that invoice should be before or at the time of movement. But before making the let export order, your goods have already moved, right?
Yep.
To the port.
Yep.
So that cannot be considered for GST purposes as the date of the invoice. So as per GST, the date of the invoice should be the date when the goods move from your factory gate. Now the export, the shipping bill would be made by another rate of foreign exchange. It can be higher, it can be lower, right? But I don't feel that there would be any problem in the refunds. The refund would be as per the invoice date itself. Have you faced any problem in the refunds?
Yeah, so far we are not facing, but we are forcing that in future, because from the last month, December onwards, the data has been started interfacing with the GST portal. So someday government will come and they will start saying that there is a disconnect between both the things. So that might be the foreseen risk.
I have to just recheck this. As far as I remember, there was a circular or an instruction to this regard. Maybe some internal instruction in this regard that the rate as per the shipping bill. So as per valuation rules, if you see rule 35, for the purpose of goods, the rate of exchange as on the date of invoice, that is the rate which the GST takes. So refunds would be generated as per that date. But if there is a mismatch with the shipping bill date, I don't think that should come in the way. But still, no, I would try to get this circular. And who's Mr. Praveen Kumar? Was it your question?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I will get back to you, Mr. Kumar. If you can just leave your email ID and mobile number on this.
Yeah, definitely.
We'll get back to you on this.
Yeah.
Okay, one more from Mr. Prashant. Is FOC to unrelated party export a supply, and do it need tax, invoice and IRN? Yes, of course. It is a supply, no doubt about it. And it would need an IRN. Okay.